Today in Operation Assets, I'm going to break down currencies, businesses, commodities that you can use privately, securely, digitally, physically, in the digital world, in the real world, in the metaverse world, whatever world you happen to find yourself in. These are going to protect your privacy, your anonymity. And also, when we live in a situation where civil wars are popping up, World War III is on the brink, economic downturn, depressions, and all of the other situations, you're going to want to look outside of the traditional investment vehicles to protect yourself. So I'm going to get into that right now today in Operation Assets. All of you pretty much know my quadrant, right? We have Monero, Bitcoin, gold, and silver. I'm going to expand on that greatly and talk about a lot of things I have not talked about before. Out of all of those, one that I highly recommend you physically hold, especially in a bad situation, of course, is gold. Gold is really important. I recently did a 3-part series videos about gold and silver with my oldest daughter. You can check out those 3 videos here. But beyond gold and silver, beyond precious metals, one thing I recommend is Bitcoin and Monero, kind of the gold and silver of the digital space, commodities. Bitcoin has been recognized as a commodity. I feel that Monero is a commodity, but there's been no official opinions put out on that. Realistically, having the king of privacy coins, Monero, Bitcoin, the king of crypto stored value, and then gold and silver, very vital. I've talked about all 4 of these at length. I had to have them in this video, but now let's move on to some other ones. Now, you may have seen that the dollar has rebounded greatly since the United States' credit downgrade from AAA to AA plus. So the dollar has had a big rebound. I recommend you have at minimum a percentage of your net worth, your disposable income, if you will, in the dollar. The dollar is powerful because it's backed by the military. I know a lot of people think the dollar is just going to fall apart, but frankly, it's not going to happen anytime soon. It would take a lot of serious issues for that to happen, not the least of which World War III. So I hope that doesn't happen, but having a percentage of your net worth in dollars right now, because if we go into a deflation situation or a depression or a recession, having dollars is going to be your best benefit. There are 3 currencies I want to talk about. So on the crypto side, the core is going to be Bitcoin and Monero. On the precious metal side, it's going to be gold and silver. Honestly, I'm not a big fan of platinum or palladium. You can get them if you want, but those are kind of outliers and they're not really going to benefit you in the same way. So gold, silver, Bitcoin, Monero. There's a lot of other altcoins you could have. We'll talk about some other crypto in a second. But from currencies, the dollar is a good basket because it's going to literally take World War III to take that dollar down, period. That there's no other solution. It's what's going to happen. And so betting on the dollar is a safe bet, even though long-term I think the dollar is going to keep losing its value. The dollar is actually up a lot right now. So if you have dollars, that's a good thing. The other 2 currencies I want to talk about, one is the financial capital of the world, Singapore. Having the Singapore dollar, which you can see right here, is very good. I would split these in 1/3. So let's say you had $30,000, like actual cash, 10,000 in US dollars, 10,000 in Singapore dollars, and the capital of international banking and a really strong currency, Swiss francs. These are the 3 currencies I would have. Every other currency is going to go in the toilet, and I would not recommend. Now, what a lot of you are going to bring up right away is, what about BRICS? Well, BRICS right now is more of a theory than anything else. And again, I would rather hold physical gold than I would a alleged gold-backed / mineral-backed currency. Will BRICS have value in the future? We remain to be seen. There's no guarantee that BRICS is ever going to go anywhere. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But as of right now, BRICS hasn't really done anything. So there could be a future update. Who knows? But right now, no. I would say the dollar, the Singapore dollar, and the Swiss francs would be the 3 currencies. If I was going to be in any 3 currencies, those would be the 3 currencies. If I was going to be in any precious metals, gold and silver, if I was going to be in any crypto, Bitcoin and Monero. But then taking this a step further. So, when it comes to money and when it comes to income, those are 2 vitally different things. What is a good way to privately and anonymously have income? Well, my background is in e-commerce. I've been in e-commerce for a very long time. Nowadays, you can have an e-commerce website completely anonymous and then accept payments through crypto. There's a lot of vendors that will accept payments through Monero, and maybe you only accept Monero, or maybe you accept other cryptocurrencies. If you have a ghosted business and you run your exchanges through there, you can accept crypto through your ghost business. If you need to cash out and pay yourself in the dollar, you can do that. How that would look is you have your website, right? You have your e-commerce website. Then what would happen is somebody would go to that e-commerce website. Maybe you drive traffic through PPC marketing, or maybe you're doing content marketing. Maybe you're doing influencer marketing. Maybe you're putting out blog posts or having articles written. There's a lot of ways you can drive traffic. So say you drive traffic to your website, and a percentage of those people buy your product. Your product could be anything, you want. Once they buy the product, how do they cash out? Well, if they cash out in dollars, that's fine, provided you have a ghost business and all the money is going through a ghost business. If they cash out in crypto, let's say you accept Bitcoin, Monero, Ethereum, and maybe you accept a stable coin like USDC. I'm just throwing out a random example. You can accept whatever you want. Then what happens is it goes to your crypto wallet, and then from there, you can either send it to your hardware wallet if you want to keep it secure, or if you want to transfer it into dollars, Singapore dollars, Swiss francs, etc., you go through your exchange and send it to your bank. Again, your bank should be in a ghosted business name, and then it goes full circle. So this is a way to bring in income through anonymously and privately, right? For your company, for your corporation. You can send your money to your holding company. You can do disbursements through a trust. There's a lot of ways you can structure this depending upon your personal situation. Is going to depend on how this should look. Now, there's a lot of fine details and nuances to make this whole machine work. But in big picture, e-commerce, regardless of what you're selling, regardless if you're selling digital or physical items, services, etc., this is a good way to do it. I've been doing this for over 12 years now, and it is a great way to do these things. I've been in the e-commerce space in several different products. I used to be extremely big in e-commerce a few years ago before I sold my core business, but this is one option that you can utilize. Okay, so having a digital online business that is ghosted that you can run payments through is a good way to keep the income going. Then from those income, you can break it up into those different asset classes. What's another way? So let's say you're young, you're 18, maybe you're 55, it doesn't matter. Maybe you've worked a job your whole life and you don't have a lot of money to your name, which is sadly the story for most people. You start an e-commerce business, you start running this cycle. With your profits, look at gold, look at silver, look at Bitcoin, look at Monero. Great options. For your emergency fund and your cash balance, you've got the dollar, the Singaporean dollar, and the Swiss franc. Great. Then what investments can you start making? Well, the biggest thing would be multifamily real estate, so you can have income-producing properties. So this is going to give you kind of a basket of what you should have. Now, frankly, I would take those 5 original cash value assets and I would break them up evenly. If I had 50 grand that I was going to put in this right now, 10,000 Swiss francs, 10,000 Singaporean dollar, 10,000 US dollar, 10,000 in silver, 10,000 in gold, that would be a good breakup. And then you can break up through payments, Monero and Bitcoin, and try to balance those out. Income producing properties, especially bought through debt, because in that situation right now, we're not worried about the long-term aspect of what the price of the property is going to be. The problem with a lot of people is they go out and they buy some fancy house that's way bigger than they need, way bigger than they can afford, with the hopes that price goes up. Prices are coming down as we speak, little by little. They're inching down, and interest rates are going up drastically, and the affordability in the housing market's falling apart. And a lot of people who wanted to refinance can't refinance. They want to sell, but house prices are starting to come down, and they can't replace their house because of the new mortgages. So we've created a giant problem in residential real estate. But I'm talking about multifamily. I wouldn't get into commercial because commercial is in a serious bubble, probably one of the biggest bubbles. But if we look at residential, then we want to take it a step further into multifamily to produce income. We're producing that income. Now, as you produce income, I already talked about a basket of assets you can put into, but another thing is a cash equivalent life insurance basket. So you actually have the ability to borrow from yourself and become your own bank. One of the reasons that Bitcoin is so popular and so prominent, see, I never recommend paper, gold, or silver, ever, under any circumstances. You should always have your gold and silver physical in your hand, in your safe, in whatever safe place you keep it, right? But it should be physical. You should have control and access to it, basically at any time within reason. Bitcoin you can actually borrow against, and so Bitcoin is a commodity you can borrow against. Again, you can with gold and silver, but I don't recommend that. Bitcoin would be a better option for that. And then there are other cryptos where this is possible. Staking is not, the DeFi space is not a space that you want to be very careful. Allocating a small percentage of assets to DeFi, having things staked, but because of the regulatory climate and the situation we're in, it's causing a lot of problems. And we don't know where this is going to go, and the bottom could fall out at any time due to regulatory bodies. And so you really got to be careful. And we've seen that happen over the last 2 years with a lot of different projects. So be careful how much you invest in that. You're better off investing in your term life so you can borrow against it. But again, you got to structure everything through your business. This is very, very vital. Do not have anything in your name. Own nothing, control everything. Everything should be ghosted. Nothing should be in your name, period, under any circumstances. We take this a step further and we look at other options, right? We look at other asset classes. We look at how we can break these things out, how the landscape can look bigger. Now, there is a scenario where raw land and things like that, but the problem is the inflation of property taxes. So unless you're flat out buying a ranch or a farm that is a working ranch or a working farm, because the massive increases in property taxes on a worldwide basis, they're even increasing property taxes on farmers in South Africa. Sadly, they're doing a lot worse than that, but that's a different video. So the massive increase in property taxes, keep in mind, you don't own it. Technically, even if you own a home, you'll never own the home. If you own the property, you'll never own the property. And you'll have these taxes and these fees and these penalties for the rest of your life. Failure to pay them, they'll take the entire thing and you get nothing. So understand that you need to use this. You need to understand how to use these things to have real income and real assets and real things that you control. This is why you got to flip your mind from ownership to control. There is no ownership. It is about control. How can you control these things to your benefit to fund your future? That's what it's about. That's the whole thing. Now, you may be asking, why I didn't hear you talk about stocks. If you're in the stock market, I wish you the best. But the stock market is the biggest Ponzi scheme I've ever seen in my life right now, currently. That's my opinion. But look at the stock market. Anybody who's ever analyzed the stock market, anybody who's ever looked at it, and it is getting ready for the biggest reset we have ever seen. So if you've got a 401k or an IRA or you're independently investing in stocks, be careful. I took all of my money out of stocks a couple years ago. I was heavily in the stock market on the come up. I have $0 in the stock market right now. Zero. Because this is the biggest Ponzi scheme anybody's ever seen. I've talked to so many 8 and 9 figure investors that are in my network, some 10-figure investors, but mostly 8 and 9 figure investors. So people who make obscene amounts of money. And all of them will tell you the same thing. They're about as cash heavy as they've ever been. Even Warren Buffett is famously cash heavy right now. Even Ray Dalio is one of the best investors ever, famously cash heavy. All of the investors are cash heavy because they see what's happening and they see what's coming. So be very, very cautious about the stock market. People ask me, should you run your securities through or should you run your IRA? Your IRA? IRA is a different vehicle because you can independently run your IRA. If you have a 401k, you have a 401k. Just keep your 401k, keep doing what you're doing, and just pray. Because the problem with 401k, well, this video, I'm not going to do a half hour on all the issues. 401k is one of the worst investment vehicles possible. And sadly, it's been peddled on Americans everywhere. The lowest returns, it's garbage. But it's better than nothing. I'll give a 401k better than nothing. So if that's what you want to do, it's better than nothing. But it is about the worst outcome you can have as a 401k. You're going to get the lowest returns. It's insane. Be careful if you're in the stock market. Be very, very careful. If you got a 401k right now, you should really be picking what you're invested in carefully. And most people are just thrown in these random baskets, and you're going to lose 30 to 60% in this next correction. It's going to be way worse than '08 when people were losing 30, 40%. So, well, some people as good as 20. So there's that, you know. But it cost people, the average person in '08 who was over 50, it cost them 7 years on their retirement to make that up. And that's where we are now. And so do you want to work an extra 5 to 10 years? Probably not. So really analyze those things and diversify your assets. This is very, very important. The other thing is any type of bonds. Personally, with how leveraged things are right now, bonds, not so much. If you're going to be investing in companies, I recommend you directly invest in companies. And this is a way that a lot of people make money anonymously and discreetly, is by investing in companies. I've got a good friend of mine, actually, who invests in small businesses discreetly as a silent investor. He basically takes a board seat, goes through, and gets basically contributions to his foundation based on the profit base. Technically legal because the way that it's structured, you got to structure this properly and have a foundation. Now, for those of you who are more advanced, having a foundation is a good option, not a charity. I do not recommend these charity scams, and not a church unless you actually have a church. I know there's a lot of people saying, oh, I just set up a church. Probably don't do that. It doesn't work well if you set up a church, and it doesn't work well if you set up a charity. And unless you actually want to have a charity or actually have a church, this is not the route. Now, a foundation is a whole different situation and something that works really, really well, and that I do recommend for the right person. And you can actually get disbursements to your foundation that is run by a trustee, and this is a way that you can actually gain legal bonuses discreetly. So it is a very popular option. And he goes around and he invests in t-shirt companies and companies who manufacture small products, maybe 3D printing companies, right? So we're talking small cap companies, startup type companies. We're not talking getting money when they go public. We're talking about P&L balance sheets on a quarterly basis. So there are options that you can do that. And that's really how a lot of investors make a really good amount of money privately and discreetly and legally. This is very important. We live in a world where a lot of our people in Congress across many, many, many countries, sadly, are talking about something called unrealized capital gains, meaning if your house goes up in value, even if you didn't sell the house, you have a tax bill. If your stock portfolio goes up in value, if your crypto portfolio, that's going to be a lot harder to do to crypto, but if the crypto is what's brought this along. If your crypto portfolio, if your stock portfolio, if your investment portfolio, if your house, if any asset you own goes up in value, you're going to have a tax bill for the unrealized capital gains. Now, realized means when you make the sale. So if I buy something for $10,000, sell it for $30,000, when I sell it, I realize those capital gains and I have a tax bill. That's why I talk about not selling it, using business-based debt, getting business credit, which is something I recommend all of you have. Once you have your ghost business, get business credit. Something I talk to most of my ghost business clients about, because business credit is so valuable. Once you establish it, doesn't take that long technically to establish it, and you can utilize these things and become your own bank. But with a lot of people, when you're looking at this process, when you're looking at how these things come together, this is very, very important. So I strongly recommend you structure these things properly, and you don't put yourself in a situation where you're struggling to try to figure out how to get by because you got these giant tax bills of unrealized capital gains on an asset that you never sold. It's another shot across the bow to home ownership, while you should rent, because if you rent, you don't have the tax bill. But if you own, you have the tax bill. You've probably seen in Chicago, that psychopath mayor they just voted in Chicago actually set up a situation where you have a bill if you have a apartment or a condo that's a rental that is vacant. You have to pay them a bill for the vacancies to keep the vacancies. I mean, this is just preposterous. So anyway, these are some assets. Let me know what assets you recommend down below. Let me know if there's some other things you would add to this. Really appreciate you guys checking out this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video.